Husband's mistress was rude to me, so I ruined her favorite thing, twice. A few years ago I found out my, now ex-husband was having multiple affairs. I contacted the women in an attempt to figure out what was going on, timelines etc. Most of the women were lovely and I held no contempt or anger for them, they were victims of lies and deception too. But one woman took a different approach. She was rude and abusive, accusing me of being controlling, frigid, fat, I'm only one of things and it's not frigid, etc. Unfortunately she was in Ireland and we were in Australia, so no chance to confront her. I tried to just move on and deal with my real problems. But, I couldn't shake the audacity. So I looked up her socials. She was hard out obsessed with Australian MasterChef. Obsessed. Being a fan myself I knew that the show was aired and concluded in Oz before it was shown in Ireland. So I screenshot the winning dish and mentioned her in a tweet containing the details of the winner and the runner-up and the winning dish photo. Then I set an alarm in my phone and did the exact same thing 1 year later. After the second spoiler she put her Twitter account on private.
Alright, let's dive into the next story and see what else Reddit has in store for us.
My landlord thought he could pull one over on me, but ended up learning the meaning of, you should have read the fine print before you signed it. TLDR, the real estate company that owns my apartment thought they could intimidate my roommates and I into signing a new, crappier contract, but ended up getting bit by their own laziness. Edit for clarity, in Germany, it is common to have indefinite rental contracts, which do not have a set end date and remain in effect until termination, usually by the tenant. Some context, I live in Germany, which has extremely strong tenants' rights. I've been living in my apartment for about 8 years now. About 1 year after I first moved in, I got a letter from the company that owns my apartment building. In short, it said this. Dear Mr. X. Asterisk, we are canceling your existing rental contract. If you wish to continue renting this apartment, please sign this new contract / with higher rent / or move out within 30 days . This scared the hell out of me. I was living in a city where the rent prices were skyrocketing and I had only just managed to find a long-term apartment I could afford. As soon as I began looking at my options, it became clear that I was either going to have to fight what was essentially an eviction or move back to the US and start building my life again just after I had finally found some stability. After I asked around a bit, someone tipped me off to something called a mistress, which is essentially a non-profit group that advocates for tenants' rights and gives its members the opportunity to get legal advice regarding their rights as tenants. I looked one up near me and booked it over to their office. I explained my situation, filled out some paperwork, and went to speak with the group's lawyer. I showed her the letter and my current contract and she looked over it for a few minutes without saying a word. After what felt like an eternity, she looked at me and said in her most diplomatic German legalese, "You have nothing to worry about. This letter is bullshit," admittedly paraphrased, but that's what it boiled down to. She then turned to a page of the contract and pointed out a single line in it, "No changes may be made to this contract unless both parties consent to the proposed changes." In other words, as long as I refuse to sign the new contract, they can't do anything to me. The group's lawyer then sent a letter on my behalf to the company. I received a copy of it for my records and essentially, it told the company that they would find themselves in some major trouble with the government if they continued to pursue the matter further. About a month went by and I heard nothing further. Then, one day, a letter from the company arrived. The company basically admitted defeat and tried to cover its tail by saying that the letter was sent in error by an employee who is no longer with the company. For the next 7 years, it became an annual ritual. Company sends ominous letter telling me I'm getting kicked out, I forward the letter to the mistress, and the mistress's lawyer sends them a letter telling them to stick the letter where the sun don't shine. And then, after attempt number 8, the lawyer sent them another letter telling them to cut the crap and stop sending these letters every year. I haven't heard from them since, smiley face.
And now, Let's see what other madness Reddit has cooked up for us.
Saw the boss who fired me yesterday and it's not going well for him. 3 years ago, I was fired from a stained glass studio where I worked as an artist, glass painter and designer, for being vocal about company safety. The owner made me the safety person because I had come from a studio that took safety seriously. I read OSHA manuals and gave so many suggestions about unsafe practices we had in the studio, handling lead, acid, and other dangerous materials. After a few years of my suggestions being mostly ignored, someone, actually not me, called OSHA during COVID when my coworkers were not masking. The boss suspected it was me since I was the most vocal about safety, and they rehired my replacement shortly after, removed my safety person duties, and fired me after enough time had passed that it wouldn't look suspicious. They cited lack of work, but had just hired someone and were firing me instead? It doesn't add up. All in all, this was a place where my contributions and expertise were largely unacknowledged and unappreciated. At the time, I had been pursuing my own work as an artist. When I was fired, I had no idea how or if I would be able to make ends meet in Los Angeles, but I did. In fact, this firing was the best thing that could have happened for my career. Last night, I saw this boss/owner at an event. The studio is doing so poorly that he had to cut everyone's hours to 2 days a week. Many people are looking for new jobs. He said, "I heard you had a show, and yes, I actually have a solo show up with a major gallery, have more than $30,000 in savings, and so much work on the horizon I'm booked through 2026. I said, "Yes, things are going really well," and flashed him a huge smile. Success is truly the best revenge. Edit, obviously did not expect this post to go so crazy, thanks to everyone who is sharing their own stories of living well after being fired from a bad job/toxic workplace. The number one comment I'm getting is, "Who tells someone how much they have in savings, lol. I didn't. I only said the part in quotes. The other information is for you, the reader, to know to help you understand where I'm coming from. Honestly, I'm appalled at how many people lack basic reading comprehension skills, but here we are. Also, obviously this boss didn't tell me how bad the studio is doing. I learned that from former coworkers I saw at the event. The crazy thing is he literally cut hours that day, so everyone was still quite upset. Again, all that was said is in quotes.
If you thought that was crazy, wait until you hear this next one.
Neighbor kept parking in my spot, so I gave her a taste of her own medicine. Alright, so this might not be the pettiest thing out there, but it felt amazing at the time. My apartment complex has assigned parking spots, and each unit has one spot that's, yours. For weeks, my new neighbor started parking in my spot after work. At first, I let it slide, figured she just got confused or whatever. But when it kept happening, I left a polite note asking her to please use her own spot. The next day, I come home, and yep, her car is there again. She crumpled my note and left it under her wiper, like she was proud of ignoring it. So, I decided I'd just use her spot instead. Every day, without fail, I parked right in her designated spot. It took 2 days before she started leaving notes on my car asking me to stop. I kept switching spots with her until she finally knocked on my door to confront me. I just acted clueless and told her, "Oh, I thought we were doing a swap since you were using mine." She sputtered out some excuse, but she finally stopped. Now, every time I pull into my spot and see her car not there, it's a tiny little win.
Ready for more? Here's another wild one that'll blow your mind.
Going to invite unwanted guests to our wedding after we already said no? Watch this. This was a few years back, but still a goodie. I wasn't on speaking terms with one of my brothers, and for good reason. He tried to start a fist fight with my now husband, and his wife threatened to shoot me. At the time, we were engaged, and I made it clear to both my brother and the rest of the family he wasn't invited to the wedding. However, my mother took it upon herself to reach out and say she talked with him and he and his wife promised to behave. I reminded her he was absolutely not invited, she had no right to do that, and she needed to call him back and make that known. Her response? But he's your brother, and to think of the family. To make matters worse, we were receiving a lot of pressure to pay for an open bar, and we don't even drink ourselves, as well as pay for a bigger venue even though we wanted a small and more intimate wedding. Where was this pressure coming from? Why, none other than my alcoholic mother, who wanted to invite a bunch of relatives I've never met and take advantage of an open bar. Now here comes the fun part. I was at my wit's end with all this family drama. So one Monday evening a couple months before the wedding, the following conversation took place. "What are you doing tomorrow?" "Me. Hanging out with you. Why?" "Now, husband. Want to get married?" "Me. Are you serious?" "Hell yeah. Now, husband." And we did. We eloped with just us and a couple of friends that offered to officiate the wedding that Tuesday evening. We saved thousands upon thousands of dollars, didn't have to deal with all the drama, and had our small and intimate wedding that we wanted. Honestly, I wish we had done this to begin with. However, my mother lost her shit. Posted all over FB seeking pity about not being at her daughter's wedding and how could I do that to her, etc. etc. Funny how she didn't mention any of the above details in her post and made it all about her wants and, woe is me. Even more funny is we would have had the wedding if she would have respected our decisions. So no, you don't get to invite unwanted guests, make demands, or get to go to our wedding.
And now, let's see what other madness Reddit has cooked up for us.
Won't move your car. Enjoy the hour wait. And a car accident. The other day I, 25 male, was delivering fuel to a gas station. This station was set up where the tank access lids are right by the parking spots. For me to be in a position to dump fuel I need to block all of the parking spots in front of the building. There's usually a car or two in the way and I can usually patiently wait until I'm clear to pull in. If it's a busy time of day I put cones up as cars leave to prevent anyone else from pulling in until I've moved into position. But this time, a lady in a Tesla absolutely couldn't handle parking 50 feet away and had to move my cone to park right in front of the door. I hopped out my truck and went inside to ask her to move so I could deliver the gas and she told me, "Get bent, you can wait until I'm done here." So I pulled my truck in behind her with about 2 inches to spare between my truck axles and her bumper. I set my brakes and began hooking up hoses to unload. Since I couldn't park in the ideal position, my large 3-inch hose was too short to reach the hole, so I used my 2 hose, which is longer but does limit flow rate by about 33%. No sooner than 5 seconds after I've opened my valve to start the fuel delivery she comes out screaming that she's in a hurry and I need to move my truck before she calls the cops for harassment. I told her, "Get bent, you can wait until I'm done here." She asked me how long it would take. I informed her that normally it would be about 45 minutes, but because I had to use my smaller hose I figured about an hour and 15 minutes. She stormed off and got in her car and called the cops. About 10 minutes later 2 officers arrive and ask what the problem is. She wants me arrested for harassment. Gas station employee sides with me saying the woman was rude and belligerent and I'm just here to do my job. The cops tell her she's just going to have to wait and they leave. I took my sweet time unloading and doing my paperwork. All total she waited an hour and a half before I moved my truck when I left. As I was waiting to pull out of the parking lot she zoomed around me and pulled out into the street, directly into the path of oncoming traffic. She was T-boned by a lifted pickup with heavy-duty cattle guard bumper. Her Tesla was totaled, the pickup was completely unscathed. She was not injured, but I almost had an asthma attack from laughing so hard, face with tears of joy.
Here's the next story that will keep you on the edge of your seat.
Mock me for not going to a strip club? Wait until your wife finds out. A bit of a backstory, but it makes the revenge even better. I've worked in software sales for the bulk of my career. About 10 years ago, my company was hosting its annual user conference in Las Vegas. As a sales guy, I pretty much had carte blanche on expenses as long as it involved clients. Expensive dinners, drinks, tables at clubs, etc. The only unbreakable rule was we couldn't pay for strippers. Having been in the industry long enough, I realized what guys would do to get around this. It was common for them to explain to a manager at a strip club, and then they would have the girls' tips added to the bottle service. Even with that in place, I never thought it was a good idea to play that game, nor did I think it was a good idea to go to a strip club with clients. It was never a good look in my mind. I was roughly 27 or 28 at the time, and one of the older guys, late 40s, Jim, was the typical sleazy sales guy. He would tell half-truths to prospects, overcharge them, oversell, etc. The type that creates a hassle for the services and implementation teams, but he still got paid so he didn't care. And when he got to Vegas, Jim would go crazy entertaining clients and himself. Sometimes he would go to dinner by himself, but say some senior VP was with him, and he also abused the stripper loophole. One of the reasons he tried to get a group to the strip club each night was that he had a very conservative wife. She made the kids go to a local Christian school, and the family went to church every Sunday. She hated the annual trips to Vegas, to the point he would tell stories that he wasn't allowed to bring his suitcase in the house. He had to leave it in the garage where the laundry room was, and she would wash his clothes and then sanitize the washing machine. On the last night of the conference, he organized a shuttle from one of the big strip clubs to pick up a group. There were some open seats he was trying to fill to meet the minimum commitment for free entry to the club. Jim saw me speaking to a client and invited us. I declined. He started mocking me about being scared of pretty ladies, or that I would probably nut the first time one of them touched me, etc. This would have normally not bothered me, but he did it in front of my client. I stated, I don't want to go because I don't think it's professional. He left. I bought my client another round, and we joked about the douchebag. Then I was on my own and decided to walk the strip a bit and head to bed early due to an early morning flight. If you've ever been to Vegas, there are people on the sidewalk handing out cards that are essentially ads for escorts. They legally can't speak to you, so they slap the cards on their hands to get your attention. After a few drinks, I started taking a few. Fast forward to the next morning when Jim and I were sitting in the airport waiting for our flight. He had stayed out to 3 or 4 a.m., and was a complete mess and totally hungover. I was 100% and enjoying his condition. At one point he went to the bathroom and asked me to watch his bag. When he was out of sight, I added those escort cards in his bag. When his wife went to do her laundry routine when he got home, she was not happy. She didn't believe in divorce, but they were suddenly going to church 3 times a week and had a weekly counseling session with their pastor. This also led to Jim dropping out of his weekly golf league. He was telling us all the story at the office looking for sympathy, and he swore he never took those cards, but couldn't remember since he was so drunk.
Here's the next story that will keep you on the edge of your seat.
Grandson calls from jail. About twice a year for the past 7 years, I get a phone call from my grandson in jail. I don't have kids, so I've started extending the conversation to waste the scammer's time and save the next person some grief. With one call, I asked him why he was breaking my heart because he promised me when I was sick in the hospital he was going to come back to Jesus and stop hanging out with those bad people. Jesus wanted him to not go to jail. Jesus could help him. He promised he'd go to church and be good for Jesus if I sent him $4,000. I told him I'd give Jesus the money and Jesus would get it to him then. With another call, I asked him why he ruined Christmas dinner by bringing that gold-digging tart that left his brother right before the wedding. He was never welcome in my home again. I never wanted to see either of them. He admitted he made a mistake, she was all wrong for him, and it was her fault he was in jail. Another call, I asked him if he told the police about what happened at the cabin. I explained that sometimes bad things happen, but it was in the past. We have to move on. And we didn't even know what his uncle did, and he couldn't help himself if something did happen. The last call, he asked for money and I reminded him he had stolen my car and my jewelry. I didn't have anything left other than my Beanie Baby collection that was going to be worth a fortune next year. I just needed to figure out to get them on the eBay.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more wild stories. Have a fantastic day, and see you next time. Ooh, ah, ah.